We begin today with a story that sparked outrage. I went to Columbus, Ohio, where a young college student's life came to a horrifying end. 21-year-old Reagan Tokes had just left her shift at a restaurant. She had no idea that she was heading into the arms of a monster. And it was a tragedy that was completely avoidable. Only minutes after 21-year-old Reagan Tokes walked out of Bodega restaurant where she worked as a waitress, her father knew something was wrong.
She told me she would call me. The phone call never came. I was actually frantically trying to get a hold of her that evening until about 2 in the morning.
But Toby would never talk to his daughter again. And instead of planning her upcoming college graduation, her family would soon be planning her funeral.
In my opinion, there's not enough justice for what happened to Reagan.
Growing up, there was never a doubt where Reagan Tokes would go to college.
She wanted to go to the Ohio State University. That was the only place she wanted to go. She looked at me and she was like, "Mom, this is the school I want, and don't worry, I'm going to get in."
Reagan was right.
She was admitted into the pre-med program there. She had excellent grades.
The summer before Reagan started college, a job opportunity took the Tokes family from Ohio to Parkland, Florida. Reagan didn't make the move with mom and dad and sister Mackenzie.
There was no point for her to move just to go right back to Ohio.
Despite the distance, Reagan spent her college years in constant contact with her parents.
I always considered myself very lucky that she wanted to talk to me every day.
So the one night Reagan didn't call when she said she would, her parents were up half the night trying to reach her.
I knew that night something was wrong. I told Lisa that I was concerned.
Mackenzie took to social media, sending out posts like this, asking anyone who had seen her sister to contact their family.
I was hesitant to do it because I knew once I did it, then it was officially real, like she was missing.
But before searches could even begin, Reagan's parents get the phone call no parent should ever have to answer.
They found her at a Metro Park at about 12 noon that day.
Reagan Tokes' nude body found about 2 miles from her work, shot twice in the head.
To even wrap your head around hearing what they were telling us, it was like you were having an out-of-body experience.
Detective Rick Forney was one of the first investigators on scene.
We get a call from Columbus Police Department that they are taking a report from some OSU students who are reporting their friend missing that did not return home.
Who would want Reagan Tokes dead?
People started wondering if her going missing was related to the other criminal incidences of people being robbed and brutalized. People were really scared.
Cops were also wondering the same thing.
We searched all the trash cans, all of the restrooms. She didn't have any clothes on, so we were looking for any type of clothing.
A search of the park turns up nothing. Where do you take the case from there?
Her car was reported stolen as well, and we needed to recover the car.
The next day, Reagan's Acura was found about 10 miles from the park. The car yields a critical clue. Someone had clearly tried but failed to set the vehicle on fire.
A cigarette butt was recovered. Also inside the car was a gas can.
Within hours, detectives learn a similar gas can had been purchased at a nearby store the same night Reagan went missing. They quickly obtained a photograph of the man who bought it. At this point, do you have any suspects?
No, none.
When does that change?
When we got the DNA hit from the cigarette butt that was located in Reagan's car.
It belongs to Brian Lee Golsby, the same man seen in the photograph buying the gas can.
I looked at him in his eyes and I saw pure evil.
Lieutenant Brian Davidson says Golsby was a registered sex offender, first arrested back in 2010. What did he do?
He actually had come up behind a female as she was exiting her vehicle and put a knife to her, and he forced her to perform oral sex on him.
The victim in that case refused to testify, fearing for her life. Golsby accepts a plea deal from prosecutors.
And he pled guilty to an armed robbery and an attempted rape.
The lesser charges meant Golsby was only sentenced to 6 years behind bars. Turns out he was released from prison just 3 months before Reagan Tokes' murder.
I didn't even realize he was out of prison.
The DNA match to Brian Golsby from the cigarette in Reagan's car was enough for cops to arrest him a second time.
I couldn't believe it was him again.
He would interrogate the same man he helped put behind bars again 7 years later.
How did y'all even know to look for me?
We're back with the tragic murder of Ohio State student Reagan Tokes. Police have a suspect, and it is someone that they have previously put behind bars, someone they should have been monitoring closely all along, but nobody was watching. Less than 48 hours after Reagan Tokes' body was found in a park in Grove City, Ohio, Brian Golsby was arrested. Cops found DNA on a cigarette butt in her car matching his.
At that time, we still can't prove that he is the one that killed her, but he was in that car at some point.
The registered sex offender was well known to investigators. Golsby served 6 years in prison after pleading guilty to armed robbery and attempted rape. He likely would have received a longer sentence, but the victim wouldn't testify in court.
She was scared. She didn't know what else he would be capable of.
7 years later, Lieutenant Davidson is questioning the convicted sex offender again, this time about Reagan Tokes.
You're here because we have a pretty good amount of evidence on what happened.
Oh, how did y'all even know to look for me?
DNA from the car.
Right away, Golsby admits he was in Reagan's car the night she was killed.
What was her reaction when he got in the car with her? Okay, and you told her you wanted what?
Because she didn't have any cash on her, Golsby forced Reagan to drive to several ATMs attempting to make withdrawals.
You're not that intimidating. How'd you keep her there? How?
I said all I wanted was the money and everything would be all right.
Golsby first claims after getting $60 from the ATM, he forces Reagan to drive to the park. Once there, he orders her out of the car, makes her undress, then leaves her in the field.
Did you have sex with her at all?
No.
You sure?
Positive.
That's when detectives tell Golsby DNA found on Reagan's body is being tested.
Any of your DNA going to be any further response? No.
Then, in a stunner, Golsby tells detectives he was forced by gunpoint to rob and sexually assault Reagan Tokes, saying there was a second person with him that night, the detective allowing him to think he believes the story. The plan worked.
Where's your clothes at? They're in the alley at Wood.
And her cell phone?
Door falling.
Where'd you throw it?
And some bushes.
He even pointed them right to the murder weapon.
The gun was inside of a storm sewer. We found 2 spent casings.
Detectives now had plenty of evidence, but they were about to have even more.
He did have a GPS ankle monitor on him.
You heard that right. At the time of Reagan Tokes' murder, Brian Golsby was wearing a court-ordered GPS ankle monitor because of a prior violent offense. If someone had been keeping tabs on his ankle monitor, they may have known he regularly missed curfew, a parole violation that could have sent him back to prison.
What good is it if they know they're wearing the ankle monitor and they break the rules associated to that and nothing happens?
Brian Golsby would ultimately stand trial on 9 counts, including aggravated murder, aggravated robbery, kidnapping, and sexual assault. It only took 5 hours for jurors to reach a unanimous verdict.
We, the jury in this case, being duly impaneled and sworn, find the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
Today I would like to apologize to the Tokes family for the conduct committed against your daughter.
With Reagan Tokes' parents looking on, he then asked jurors to spare his life.
The only other thing I have to say is, please have mercy on me.
In the end, the jury did show Brian Golsby mercy.
Life imprisonment without parole.
And Reagan's family erupts in tears. How would you describe Reagan Tokes?
She was just a beautiful child. Yep.
And this is truly one of those, I'm sorry. This case is very personal to you in this department.
Yes, it is. Yep.
We loved Reagan with all our heart, and we miss her. It's very tough.
After Reagan's murder, her parents helped write a law to keep people who have not behaved well in prison from being released back into society. The legislation also involves more effective monitoring of ex-convicts who are required to wear GPS ankle monitors. There was pushback, but the Reagan Tokes law was upheld by the Ohio Supreme Court, and Reagan's mom says she is thrilled about the court's decision.